Okay, can everyone see my screen for the first slide?
You're good on my end.
All right, thanks, Jasper. Appreciate that. All right, welcome everyone to the WVU Outdoor Economic Development Collaborative's West Virginia Outdoor Economy webinar series. This is our third webinar in this series, and we aim to provide them about once a month throughout the year on topics that are relevant to our outdoor economy. So things that you have interest in, please let us know. We want to be able to create relevant topics to help you do what you do and do it in the best way possible. So this webinar is for you, and I really appreciate you spending your time with us today to learn about pathways to the accessible outdoors. My name's Corey Lilly. I'm your host. I'm Outdoor Community Development Manager for the Brad and Elise Smith Outdoor Economic Development Collaborative. We're office out of the provost office at WVU, and our purpose is to stop the population loss and at least slow it and reverse it in West Virginia. And we do that by empowering our partners across the state and partners such as yourselves, providing these webinars, providing programs, providing training, providing technical assistance for projects on the ground from outdoor infrastructure to um, programmatic offerings to talent attraction and retention. We have two departments of our team. You might have heard about the Ascend or First Ascent program. That's in our talent attraction and retention program. And then on our community infrastructure economic development side is the team that I would get to work on. So we offer the trainings, outdoor business development, coaching, grants and research. We have a full suite of offerings that we'd like to provide our partners across the state to help them advance their outdoor recreation projects. So, wanted to give a heads up. We are developing our 2026 Trails Training and Education calendar. So, we have a few different offerings with our programs. We have on the ground training with our remote or mobile trails lab. We'll come to your town and help your staff or your community get trained up to be able to do volunteer trail days. So this is one program that we have, and we're developing the schedule. So wanted to give this program a shout out. So if you have a space or interest in this type of program in your community, please let us know. We're developing that 2026 schedule right now. A few other things I wanted to put on your radar. The next webinar will be in November. It is for grant management. Our grant management team will be going through uh, uh, best practices in applying, and then once you get your grant, how to deploy it in the most effective way possible. And then additionally, we have a free water trails workshop on November 4th at Hawks Nest State Park. It's a full day workshop, in-person workshop. It's free to attend. I'll be dropping the links to these programs in the chat that you can sign up. If you have interest in water trails, would love to have you there. West Virginia has the highest concentration of navigable streams in the continental US. And think of how many water trails that you know of. We have a couple, Coal River and some other places. The New River does really well, but we have a huge opportunity for growth in water trails. And so this is our a workshop to begin down that path of how do we activate more of our rivers to benefit our communities. We have some outdoor community meetups that are coming in the year, but to keep up with all of these things, we have another strategic convening in February 17th and 18th. Please put this on your calendar. It's the inaugural West Virginia Outdoor Economy Summit. I'll be dropping the link to the website in the chat that you can sign up. It'll be the 17th and 18th in Charleston, and then on the 19th, partnered with the Nature Conservancy, will be a day at the Capitol. Would love to have you all there. We're starting to develop our tracks, and we're getting a great suite of presenters and panelists to be there. We really hope to bring together the entire ecosystem of the outdoor economy from our tourism partners to our conservation partners and local businesses. To keep up with everything, I'll also drop a link to this in the chat. Everything that we offer is delivered through our newsletter. So all of these programs, if you want to keep up with everything that's happening with the WV OEDC and the trainings that we'll be offering, the webinars, if you want to be notified of that, this is the best source of information that we and channel that we communicate through. So we'd love to have you sign up and so that we can best get you the information that you need. I'll also drop this in the chat. But I'm really excited to welcome our featured presenter today, Bobby Chappell from Tourism Impact Services. He is one of the nation's leading experts in accessible tourism in the outdoors, in communications around that, and how do you best host this particular user group. And from personally, a personal perspective is that I believe, that this user group can, they there's a big opportunity in West Virginia, and I think across the nation too, on how do we best service them and give them a destination that's worthy for them to come to and to improve their quality of life if they like to visit, but then also like how do we improve our community's quality of life for our residents. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Bobby Chappell. Thanks so much for being here and sharing your expertise with us. I'm really excited to learn what you have to show today.
Yeah, thank you, Corey, and thank you, everyone, for joining today. I'm excited to be here. I'm actually working on a project with OEDC right now, so happy to contribute in other ways to really advance some concepts around accessibility and outdoor recreation. So I will share my screen real quick and we'll get started.
And with everyone on the call today, if you wouldn't mind dropping your name and title and the organization that you are a part of to give Bobby and ourselves and everyone on the call a sense of who's on the call today. And just a quick note, questions, we'll have a Q&A at the end of Bobby's presentation. So if you have a question, please feel free to drop it into the chat and we will get to it at the end. Thanks, Bobby.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, everyone, as Corey said, my name is Bobby Chappell, and I am the president and founder of Tourism Impact Services. We are a strategic planning and an implementation firm, and we work primarily with outdoor destinations around the country, but primarily in Appalachia, helping them plan for resilience, scale destination stewardship principles and concepts throughout the entire community, and then enhance visitors' experiences, and primarily doing a lot of work with accessible outdoor recreation. And as an outdoor enthusiast myself, as a travel and tourism planner, and a caregiver for a child with a physical disability, I have a very personal connection to this subject. And so I hope that this webinar will really kind of encourage everyone here, to think about different ways that you can advance accessibility and outdoor recreation in your region. One second. There we go. All right. So today is what I want to do is really introduce a few challenges and lots of opportunities for destination partners to engage with accessible outdoor recreation. We'll introduce concepts primarily around communicating accessibility for outdoor spaces as well. So we'll cover three kind of quick lessons within this session today. It'll be foundations in accessibility, accessibility in outdoor recreation, and expanding accessibility communications. And for foundations of accessibility, where we'll get things started, I'll be providing a background on accessibility and the importance of and challenges to access for outdoor recreation. So I, presume everybody here is very familiar with all of the benefits that are offered through outdoor recreation. And obviously, it is known to promote physical activity, but it also is shown to reduce stress, to reduce anxiety and depression. Outdoor recreation can foster an appreciation of nature, which then leads to a stronger desire to protect and preserve natural spaces. It also creates opportunities for people to come together and strengthen relationships. It's known to be an impactful catalyst, importantly, for economic development and community growth. And that's because it can attract tourism and encourage spending by visitors and residents in our downtown areas. It also attracts businesses, highly skilled workers, and retirees that are looking for outdoor communities and quality of life. And then this all works to stimulate our local economies that can then in turn support essential services like healthcare, primary education, and other community programs. But with all those benefits, it still has challenges as well. And then one of the reasons is that there is still a group that is often left sidelined simply because the physical world in and of itself just isn't designed for them and creates a barrier in and of itself. So certainly a lot of our outdoor attractions have accessibility features when you arrive, things like parking and restrooms, signage. But many of the times when you arrive at these different facilities, those amenities don't connect. So you can arrive and there might be an accessible parking spot, but there's not a curb cut to get from that parking spot to a restroom. Or then you go into the restroom and there is an accessible stall there, but there might be a large trash receptacle in the way that would prevent, like a large power chair, from being able to navigate effectively into that stall. There might be a case where you have to go up a step to get to interpretive signage. A picnic area is on the other side of an impassable gate. The trail that you're there to enjoy doesn't have sufficient trail information. The visitor center hasn't yet addressed sensory sensitivities. The list goes on and on and on. And unfortunately, any one of these, what is a seemingly insignificant obstacle, can bring someone's outdoor experience to an immediate halt. And so those small obstacles really create big challenges. But what I really want to try to introduce today is that there are some small improvements that can go a long way. So taking a quick step back, I think it's important to make sure that we kind of understand what we're talking about when we are talking about a person or people with disabilities. So the clinical definition of a person with a disability is anyone who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activity. There are visible and invisible disabilities that can impact the way people live. Those are the ones that most people, kind of think about. Mobility causes challenges with balancing or walking, climbing stairs. There's cognitive disabilities, which create challenges for concentrating, decision making. There's hearing and vision disabilities as well. And then if there's any sort of real challenge with independent living or self-care, those are also classified as a disability. But I think what is important to realize is that disability isn't just about body and mind. Disability also happens when society and infrastructure and systems are not designed for everyone. So disability is when the world isn't designed for you. And so when we are trying to advocate for improved access to the outdoors, what we're really doing is trying to create life-changing experiences for the largest minority in the world. And so this is the largest minority in the world and the one that pretty much all of us have a good chance of being in at some point in our lives. And so that's people with disabilities. It's estimated about 1.3 billion people worldwide. That's about 1 in 7 have some form of significant disability. Here in the US, that number goes up. It's about 1 in 4 adults in the US have some type of disability. And another way of thinking of that is that 73% of the adults in the United States are just temporarily abled, because it really does only take one wrong step, one, kind of crash on a trail, a lot of different ways that you can find yourself in that community. But disabilities don't keep people from traveling and wanting to experience nature and culture and everything that you can do while traveling across the country and around the world. And in 2024, Open Doors organization and the Harris Poll did a survey in the United States, and they found that in 2023, 26 million travelers with disabilities took 77 million trips and spent about $50 billion. Add to that, by 2030, this number is expected to double and the spending reach about $100 billion annually just from travelers with disabilities. And then you can add to the mix that by 2030, 1 in 5 Americans are going to be over the age of 65. Many of these, in this group are already reporting some form of disability, but in majority of them fully intend on traveling through their retirement. But unfortunately, in a different survey from pitchup.com, they're a booking engine that have camping and glamping sites around the country, kind of similar to Hip Camp. They found that 83% of their respondents just completely avoid outdoor travel and outdoor activities because of accessibility issues. So clearly, there is a need that we should be thinking about how to make the outdoors more accessible for the largest minority in the world. All right, now let's talk about accessibility in outdoor recreation. And I want to introduce a couple of concepts that make up accessible outdoor spaces and activities. Before we do that, I'd like everybody to just take a quick minute and think about accessibility in outdoor recreation that probably already exists within your communities. So take a second and think about, any of the national parks, that are around, or state parks that you have in your area. And then think about accessibility features that are there beyond just, like the parking, but are there, kind of accessible campsites? Are there picnic areas that are designed to make it easy for a wheelchair to roll up to? Are there interpretive visitor centers? Are there ranger-led activities that are going on a regular basis? Then think about your local county and neighborhood parks. Are there accessible playgrounds that can be enjoyed there? Do any of your local parks have like an accessible fishing pier? Are there paved greenways or boardwalks? Are there historic sites that are easy to navigate? Is there accessible parking at these different places? Then think about your rec department. Are they running adaptive sports programs? These are just some things to think in mind as we start looking, introducing the different elements for accessibility and outdoor recreation. And this is where I'm really fortunate to have my personal journey and my professional work intersect, so kind of as a caregiver and as a strategist. So obviously, as a caregiver, as a parent, I'm always thinking first and foremost about, really how to make sure that my child, is just really able to fully experience everything that we have in our community and when we travel. And as a strategist, I like to categorize things. And so that's kind of what I've done here. And through this experience, I've come up with what I see as kind of 3 focus areas around accessibility in outdoor spaces, and that's infrastructure, invitation, and information. And for infrastructure, here we're talking specifically about the design and the construction of trails and facilities. This is really about removing barriers and creating welcoming spaces. And then for the invitation, here we're talking about the outfitters and the operators and the different types of programming that get people with disabilities into the outdoors. And for information, here we're talking about this idea of improving information that is available about accessibility of specific sites and facilities, and also how we can enhance our information through intentional marketing and media. So let's start with infrastructure. So much work happens here because it's so important. Because when I say infrastructure, I mean any kind of outdoor asset that's built. So that's paved greenways, that's single track, that's boat launches, parks, picnic areas, signage, and so on. So as you can see, without the infrastructure, we really don't have much outdoor recreation. And for accessible outdoor recreation infrastructure, this all starts with the Americans for Disabilities Act, or the ADA. And essentially, what the ADA does is it makes discrimination against people with disabilities illegal, and then provides a framework for equal access. Then you have the U.S. Access Board, which develops and maintains design standards, which is essentially implements the ADA across facilities, which includes our recreation environments, especially those on public lands. And the intent really is to make sure that people with disabilities can enjoy meaningful access to the outdoor recreation. So it's just creating, access to these places. Equal access is really what it's about. From that kind of legislative foundation, then our federal land management agencies, the Park Service, the Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife, Bureau of Land Management, Army Corps of Engineers, they each have created guidelines that shape how their individual systems plan, build, and maintain accessible outdoor spaces. So the Park Service has their own set of guidelines. The Forest Service has their own. BLM has their own as well. And what's great is we're also seeing state park systems across the country adapting and adopting their own standards. And what's really great to see here is that they're moving beyond just the basic ADA compliance and really going above and beyond compliance. Because again, ADA is just a base minimum. It's kind of, like the 50th percentile. It's not really doing anything to make things a whole lot easier. It just creates equal access to some of these places. So seeing state agencies go above and beyond that is really great progress. And to give a couple of examples, I always like to speak about the National Park Service, because they really are doing an incredible job and being seen as a national leader in accessible outdoor recreation. And that really does kind of mean their front country developed areas. So their visitor centers, their campgrounds, their day use trails, things like that. A lot of this comes from I can't remember how long ago, but they created a director's mandate for change. So at the highest level of the National Park Service, they have created a mandate for change and have really focused more and more on any sort of new development or any retrofitting or enhancements of current development, focusing on this idea of universal design. So universal design just means that it is universally suitable for anyone, regardless of their abilities. So someone in a wheelchair, parents with a stroller, someone with a cane, someone with a vision impairment. So this idea of universal design is something that they have put in the forefront of what they're doing as an agency. And they're also continuously evaluating and improving trails to the extent that they can, and putting a lot of attention into their interpretive information, creating a lot of interpretive signages that have braille or audio descriptions. So many different ways for people to be able to have an experience within our national park system. This is helping to create or to remove barriers and create safe spaces, no matter what your needs or abilities are. And the cool thing that's been happening as well, just to kind of touch on this quickly, the Great American Outdoors Act from 2020, there was a part of that legislation that included funding for deferred maintenance for our federal public lands. I'm sure everybody's familiar about, just the billions of dollars of deferred maintenance that we have. And part of the Great American Outdoors Act was helping to improve that. What's been great is a lot of our land managers have been able to utilize that funding to make ADA enhancements on their lands. And so doing things like improving parking, campgrounds, and trail upgrades, all kind of tied up in there. And then going back to the state park systems, I always like to also mention Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, because they're really doing a fantastic job. Tennessee and others are doing great work as well. But Oregon in 2021, they developed an ADA transition plan. And in that plan, they identified nearly 5,000 individual barriers across the entire state at their 273 facilities that they have across the state, and created a roadmap on how to remove those barriers. And then at the same time created design standards on how they can continue to improve the next generation of improvements that they're doing in their facilities around the state. They've also found ways to not just create this roadmap, but ways that they are investing in those improvements as well. Okay, so the second element is the invitation. This is really about how people are welcomed in to outdoor recreation, not just given access for participation. And so these are outfitters and special organizations that host and lead adaptive and accessible outdoor recreation activities. And they have a very special place in connecting people with disabilities to the outdoors. And there's a couple of different ways that these type of outfitters and operators go about doing this, different types of programming that they offer. The first, which is one that most people, probably heard it used before, is adaptive programming. And that refers to experiences that are specifically designed and tailored for people with disabilities. These are usually offered at like designated times, and many times it has specialized support in those types of adventures as well. Then you have included or inclusive programming. And these would be experiences that are happening just kind of on a regular basis. So like kind of a kayaking or a whitewater rafting trip that also has taken or made special attention to like being sensory friendly, but it can happen at the same time as one of their usual tours would. So that's the idea of kind of included programming. What's important to know is that both of these types of programs offer some very unique, support in what they do. And the first one is they provide access to expensive adaptive equipment. And that's really important to recognize that a lot of the adaptive equipment, like that chair that you see on the screen there, any kind of retrofitted kayak, any other type of mountain bikes, these are very expensive pieces of equipment, and it's not something that the general public can go out and purchase these types of things on their own. Some can, but for the most part, to really be able to have these types of adventures, you need this type of specialized equipment, and it is expensive. So these program operators are there and able to offer that to participants. The other thing they do is they create these very safe environments for people to do some unsafe things, which really helps to challenge them and build confidence. And in doing that, they're also building community through these life-changing experiences. And so, what's really, I think, important to think about is a takeaway from this is that, it's more than just outdoor recreation too. Adaptive programming is usually the first point of contact that people with disabilities have with the outdoors. And so it creates this gateway into the outdoors. And going with these specialized programs, and one here in particular that I'll talk about, Adaptive Adventures Program. They are a national organization. They serve people with mobility disabilities, through outdoor recreation. They did a study of their participants, and they found that 79% of their participants improved their mental health through participating in these programs. 79% expanded their social connections, 76% increased confidence, and 47% enhanced their independence. And so that really is the power of these types of programs. Okay, so now we will talk about the third element, and this is information and communication and communicators. And honestly, and it's it's where I come from. Like with a lot of the work that I've done, I feel like this is the most overlooked and potentially the most powerful tool that we have at our disposal, because access isn't just about what is being built, it's also about what is being shared. And so access to a trailhead, to a kayak launch, to a campground, this starts long before anyone arrives at that facility. It starts the moment that they search for a destination, that they browse a website, that they open a visitor guide. And then belonging is a way to build trust and to set expectations and to really show visitors that they are welcomed from the beginning. And so photos and words, and then even staff interactions, all of these communicate that someone was expecting them. And so representation is also a form of information. And this is where destination marketing and management organizations, or DMOs, tourism partners, can come in. They are a bridge. They are conduits of information. They're not land managers, but they can communicate what is on the land, these different activities and facilities that are there and available. And the core idea is that what's right for one person isn't necessarily going to be right for another person. So we're trying to shift attention to the right information, because when people are given the right information, they can make the right decisions for themselves. And in doing that, you're creating freedom and you are creating agency. And that's the difference between somebody feeling like I might be able to do this versus I know I can do this. You're creating a level of confidence. And you're then helping to kind of transition from access to experience. So this really is grounded in the information that is available to them. And this includes talking about the physical features that someone will experience when they arrive at an outdoor attraction or trailhead. So parking and restrooms, absolutely, but also the trail conditions, obstacles. And you're also trying to set expectations about the experience. What's the distance of the trail? Will there be available on-site wayfinding? Are there noise levels that visitors need to be aware of? Different smells and senses that might be activated in these different places. This is all really positive information that can be shared with people with disabilities, because it isn't just about the accessibility. It's about reducing uncertainty and increasing autonomy. And then the idea that, the more transparent that you are, the more confident a visitor with a disability can be. Okay. So now is what I want to do is kind of transition from, those elements of accessibility in outdoor recreation and focus specifically on expanding accessibility communications, because I do feel like this is something everyone is involved in and does as part of their job. If you're a land manager, if you are a tourism provider, an outfitter, these are different ways that we can think about enhancing our communications. And it's important to do that because again, I feel like it is a very easy way to make a lot of impact. And just to really drive it home, according to the National Ability Center, 82% of travelers with disabilities say that they do not have access to the outdoor activities that they want to participate in. And the reason is lack of information and lack of confidence. So we know that there is an information gap, and this really is justification on why the information element is so important. And to try to, put this in a bit of a personal perspective, to bring some of this idea of information and communication and experience to life, I'm going to share a little bit of a personal story with you to try and do that. So a lifetime ago, I was fortunate to live in the state of Oregon for many years. It's where my wife and we were boyfriend, girlfriend when we moved out there. We were engaged and married there. We adopted our fur babies there. Our first daughter was born in Oregon. So just to say that we have a very deep connection to that state and always enjoy going back to visit. So this year we packed up the family, planned, and went and had a pretty epic 2-week vacation, moving around to a bunch of different places in the state of Oregon. And what we experienced at every step of the way was access and belonging. And that's because Oregon, like I said, truly is leading the nation in advancing accessible travel and accessible outdoor recreation. And through my professional lens, I can recognize that is what they've done is put a lot of work into creating an enabling environment that has required really kind of top to bottom coordination. So it's not just happening on its own in isolation. There's a lot of coordination that is happening to make this happen. Things like the state legislator funding those accessibility improvements in state parks. And then you have Travel Oregon, which is the state tourism office providing tourism grants, kind of accessible tourism grants specifically down to the local DMOs so that they can improve their information, the quality of their information, the types of tools that they have, trip planning tools. They're updating their websites, and they're also verifying their visitor services. And then at every step along the way, all of the different businesses are welcoming you into the door and creating kind of touch points that really kind of make you feel welcome. And so through my eyes as a caregiver, the end result was a parent that felt like my daughter was seen and that we as a family were welcomed and that we belonged. And because of that, the entire vacation experience was elevated just because you could tell that they cared and that they had put the effort in. Now I'll take this one step further, and I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into travel planning that I did for this trip to try to then illustrate what good practice looks like. So what we've got here, this is the BLM, or the Bureau of Land Management. This is their accessible recreation map. This was launched in late 2023, and they're continuing to add to it. And it's a part of a much larger accessibility program within the BLM. And you can probably tell by looking at it, it doesn't include every single trailhead or every single access point across all the lands that the BLM has, but it does have numerous interpretive centers, developed recreation areas, and campgrounds. So this is really fantastic for passive outdoor recreation, but all of these spots also included jumping off points to explore deeper into the backcountry. And I thought it was a great tool for us to plan our trip, because you could look at a lot of different places and try to find, like this was helping to define what our itinerary was going to look like. And then also give us specific information that we could expect once we got on site. So it was on a kind of an ArcGIS story map. You could look at the whole map, really easy to zoom into specific places, click on one of the sites, and then this other pop-up window came up, and it included just a lot of comprehensive information. Things like directions, site description, accessibility features, an entire accessibility description, photos, fees, phone numbers, essentially everything that you need to plan a trip to one of these specific sites. My favorite part of it was all of the photographs. And so for this particular site that we visited, which was the Wildwood Recreation Site on Mount Hood, it had 57 photos in the online photo album, and every single one of them was directly related to the accessibility of that site. Everything from the restrooms, the entrance, the stalls, the trails, different bridges, picnic areas, and all of the facilities that they had at that site. And then when we arrived, it was everything that we expected it to be and much more. And I would say that if you're ever in and around Mount Hood, it's a great place to stop. It's right off of 26, easy jumping off point right before you get to Mount Hood. Has a nice little stroll down to the Salmon River, and some really cool exhibits on aquatic habitats in the Pacific Northwest. The other thing that I recognize about this too, though, again, kind of being able to put on my, tourism strategy hat, is that this is a federal agency, right? And they have pretty significant resources that they can use to develop these types of resources. So how can you do this locally if you have limited resources? So now I want to introduce and provide a little insight to what we created through Outdoor NC. And this is an initiative through Visit North Carolina. And this was our Accessible Outdoors Toolkit that we created. And the idea was to make something that had a low barrier to entry, that was easy to do, and had big impact at the end. And so this was specifically designed for our DMOs, or destination marketing and management organizations. And we had a few steps that I'll introduce, and then I feel like this is something everybody can take home and do on their own as well. So the first thing the toolkit did was help DMOs establish partnerships with their local land managers. Many of them did not have active relationships with their land management organizations. And so this was a way to create conversation around a particular subject, such as accessible outdoor recreation, and provided these DMOs with a set of questions so they were asking the right questions about accessibility. The second thing that the toolkit does is provide an easy to use inventory tool. And we just asked our partners to just identify 5 outdoor assets. So these would be, state parks, county parks, greenways, any kind of outdoor asset. And then step three, the toolkit provided communication templates to help our DMO partners describe accessibility features. So parking, restrooms, picnic areas, playgrounds, interpretive signage, paved trails, fishing piers, and so on. And then finally, we provided templates on how to create a blog or a web page to share this information on accessible outdoors to residents and to visitors. And we had people do different things. Some created pretty comprehensive websites, others just created a blog that had 5 short little descriptions about 5 different places. And through our first 2 program cycles, we've already worked with 25 counties in North Carolina, and they've inventoried over 140 assets specifically around accessible outdoors. So now I'm going to move kind of quickly through this. I see that we're getting close to the top of the hour. A few tactics and best practices to think about when you create communications for people with disabilities. So the most common and straightforward way is, really promoting these features through your website. So if you are a destination marketer, a DMO, this can be something that where you create that content and you host it on some sort of an accessible travel or an accessible outdoor page. You can also create a page and then direct visitors to external sites. So a state park website where they are already hosting accessibility information on their site. And so you can be that conduit to direct visitors over to their site. And if you're a land manager, just as I'm saying that we're trying to direct visitors to your site, you want to make sure that you are at a minimum including all of the ADA compliance requirements, but also thinking about how can you go further? How can you provide more detailed information on the physical environment, the other facilities that are there, and then more importantly, the experience that a visitor can have. So some of those things that I shared from the BLM. And if you want to start small, like I said, a blog post is something easy to do. And going big, you can certainly create specialized guides, maps, and brochures, or you can just integrate accessibility into some of those kind of assets that maybe you already have, and you can just improve, information around accessibility on those pieces. And then a few quick best practices on design. I can't overstate this one enough, but, make your accessibility information easy to find. Don't bury it somewhere. Put it in the main navigation of your website. Really easy to find. Just makes it a lot more inviting for people with disabilities to know that it's something that you want to be able to share and are excited to share. Then, of course, digital accessibility, things like your font, your colors, your audio, different graphics. There's a lot of free tools out there and professional services that can help with that. I think the important thing to remember is that it doesn't have to be perfect. So don't wait for perfect on this. Get started with it and then make improvements along the way. And then finally, and very importantly, I think you want to be intentional and respectful of both your words and your images. And one important thing that I will share is this concept of people first language. And that's the idea that you put the person in front of the disability and you use terms like a person with a disability, people with a disability, a person who uses a wheelchair, versus just grouping it as disabled people. They're not disabled, they have a disability. And then with your marketing and representation, things like that, you don't have to show people with disabilities, being heroic or inspirational. Just show them enjoying the outdoor assets that you have, just like anybody else would as well. Okay, so now to wrap things up, just want to kind of quickly recap where what we covered and give you some thoughts for closing out and moving forward. But outdoor recreation, as we know, has a wealth of benefits but there are certainly some challenges for people with disabilities to access the outdoors. And then travelers with disabilities make up a significant share of the travel market, but they do have special needs related to travel planning and on site information, which is often underserved. And just remember that access and belonging start the moment that someone dreams about your outdoor activities. And then everybody has a role to play, and collaboration is key. So, land managers are removing those physical barriers of the infrastructure. Activity providers are inviting people in and providing access to equipment and community. And destination marketers and communicators are positioned to share this information, about infrastructure and about activity providers. And then there are definitely tools and tactics that everyone can aspire to, kind of those big ideas, and then some very simple, practical ways to get started. So just remember, it really isn't a lack of accessible opportunities. There are a lot of accessible opportunities out there, but it is a lack of information. And information creates access, it creates belonging, it creates the experience. And it's something that we can't do alone, and we really shouldn't try to do it alone, So engage with people with disabilities and engage with your land managers, your program managers, your tourism managers, because collaboration also creates access. And so this is something that we can all start on immediately. Thank you.
Bobby, that was really incredible. Thanks so much. I know there's a lot of light bulbs going off in my head in thinking about this and being really inspired. And what I really appreciate is that, not letting perfect be the enemy of good. There's a lot of things that we can do right away. And some of those things that I saw was just simply like having a great photo library of the infrastructure and being able to communicate that, right. Like these are all things that we all have phones and we can do a lot of these things, right. And so just keeping it front of mind. I really appreciated that. And there were some resources that you mentioned that I might try to reach out to you and get, like the toolkit from North Carolina, if that's available publicly or something. I'd love to be able to put that on our resource library or something like
Mm-hmm.
that to share with some of our partners. But now, yeah, now's a good time. I want to open it up for questions. Feel free to unmute yourself, turn on your camera, and speak up.
I have a question for you, Bobby.
Absolutely.
Hi, my name is Hannah Wana. I'm the creative director here at Visit Mountaineer Country in North Central West Virginia, and we're coming off of hosting the Governor's Conference on Tourism here in Morgantown, and had a really great speaker on accessibility who also had a child with a disability, and so it kind of got our gears turning, and we're building out, an accessibility landing page. We got moving and now have an accessibility icon on the main page of our site. So we're really trying to work that into our 2026 planning. Something that I would like guidance on is in terms of photography, like the
Mm.
visuals for our landing page, for our materials. We want to brand our destination as one that is accessible for all and work with our local partners to do that. But we're struggling finding photography that kind of puts, the folks with disabilities who struggle with these things in the photos themselves, which I think would really be a draw, right, to help them envision themselves in our destination. So what is your recommendation for how to source those kinds of photos or how to approach the situation of maybe scheduling a photo shoot or something like that without being offensive or politically incorrect or whatever that may be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will tell you, and you might be able to, like I'm not a photographer, so I don't have too many specialized photos in here. And the ones that I have are ones that I had to search far and wide, to just be able to fill in a presentation, much less create, a full set of content within a web page. So from our experience, especially in the outdoor NC example, uh, we have done a couple of specific photo shoots for that purpose. Myself and my daughter were in one of them, like on a fishing pier, and then there's a really big group of adaptive mountain bike riders in the area, so it was pretty easy to go and get in with them and do some really kind of like real high adventure photo shots with them. But then they also went to some local state parks that were on lakes and a lot of different ways that you can do that. We're fortunate to have some really innovative adaptive programming providers here. So,
Right.
that would, I would say, be the first thing is get in touch with those types of specialized operators and go and work with them and get some of the shots that they're doing. If they're, on a kayaking trip, if they're on a fishing trip, whatever it might
Yeah.
be, get some of those photos. But it usually does take kind of sourcing that yourself. It's a bit of a challenge, and it speaks volumes to
Right.
the reality as well that it's just you're not going to go to iStock and find that type of kind of visualization you would want to go create it. And then importantly too, working with the people in that community, people with disabilities, that you can turn to and ask them if they want to participate, get their feedback on it, how they want to be represented in it. Those are all really great questions to ask. The other thing too, along those same lines, to help bring it to life, there is a growing group of influencers with disabilities or with children with disabilities that are always happy to come to new destinations and travel and do photography, video, and some like storytelling and blogs about different destinations too. So I know that is kind of paramount right now with kind of destination marketing is really
Right.
storytelling. That's a great thing to do too.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And Corey, I
Absolutely.
see your resource in the chat, so I appreciate that too. I'll check them out.
Yeah, great question, Hannah. Anyone else? Boog, so I'm sorry, Bobby. So for many people, it's easy to see how we might be able to remove like physical barriers, but curious with what are some considerations for like neurodivergent conditions?
Yeah, I think many times it is easy to think about physical barriers, mobility issues. How do you get a wheelchair past here? How could, somebody with a cane or a walker, get through this area? And that I think it's easier to see, but it doesn't make trying to remove issues and challenges and obstacles around cognitive barriers as well any less important. And there's a lot of things that can be done for cognitive disabilities as well as neurodivergent type travelers, those with autism or ADHD, anything like trying to create safe spaces, sensory free spaces, things to try to reduce anxiety before they arrive, So this is really where that information being shown in a different way, where you can create a lot of certainty before you arrive at a place, even what you're going to see when you come in the front door. Are there going to be people there that are going to greet you? Those types of things that are shown through visualization and photographs is a way to help improve that, to remove some of the uncertainty barrier and obstacles that are included. And then, like in a visitor center, you're seeing more and more of that, like kind of quiet spaces. You're seeing very clear, easy to understand, not very busy signage and wayfinding. It's something that I've learned along the way that I didn't know about, but something as simple as a sign on a trail that tells you how far you've gone, how far it is to the terminus of the trail, so someone doesn't get um, along the way and not kind of know where they can turn around, how far they've gone. It is just a sense of confidence and comfort and certainty that needs to be given a bit more attention in that respect.
Curious, a piece of content that would this be helpful. I've seen this actually like displayed in like my dentist office where they'll
Mm,
have someone who's carrying a gimbal with a camera that's recording a video and they'll walk the length of like a really famous trail and it's really smooth, like high quality video. Is something like that, would that be like helpful to, I know that a lot of photos are good, but something that even showed from front to like beginning to end, all of that.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things I'm sure you and I and others, like you're trying to go and plan a hike or, a ride or something like that. And part of the fun is the anticipation of not really knowing what it's going to be when you get there. That's not necessarily the case for someone with a cognitive or neurodivergent disability. They need to see it, they want to understand it, and then their experience is more elevated because they feel more comfortable when they arrive, which is a very different thing. And so it is this idea of um, just seeing things through that lens, um, more than just what we have, probably been accustomed to, for 20, 30, 40 years in the way that we plan and promote excursions and experiences.
Hmm. I know just for myself in paddling whitewater, there's an individual who created these just videos that are just he hits record once and it's beginning to end, but it shows you all the rapids, all these things, right? And it helps me when I'm going into a new section of whitewater
Mm,
to feel comfortable, like I know what I'm getting myself into, and I could see it, being something very similar if we created these videos. I'm even thinking about the Long Point Trail in the New River Gorge National Park.
mm,
There's a recent accessibility study that was done of all, the obstructions and different things that folks might come across as they go on the trail, and to be able to communicate that. But almost if those data points in a video were lined up to say like, a mile and a half down the trail, and then it shows that in the video you're at a mile and a half, and this is the obstruction that you might come across type
right.
thing. I just see a lot of opportunity in that, like utilizing
Yeah,
video.
and I'll tell you this, going back, before I really started working in this space a lot, and was just kind of experiencing it as a family. We would go on a trail in the Smoky Mountains, which we're pretty close to, and there would be just everything there. And I assume West Virginia has a lot of similarities. Old logging roads are now like the trails that follow the riverbeds up to the headwaters, but all of that low water, kind of the low elevation water, pretty flat, wide old logging roads are a huge number of miles of trails in the Smokies like that, but nobody promotes those as accessible trails. And that's where I just started saying, hey, let's just, like, anybody have a good map for, for like the gravel trails in and around this area that we could look at? And then it might be something like one down log that's a mile in or a half a mile in. And it's just like, oh, hey, you remove this one thing, you're going to open up 6 miles of potential trail. And this is for, like a child in a wheelchair, and so that's like you need a little bit better trails for those, or at least something a little more kind of wide and flat. And yeah, there's just so many opportunities when, and again, and I want to emphasize too, um accessible with a capital A, ADA compliant, right? That's not necessarily what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about accessible with a lowercase a, which is sharing information about what the trail is, just the facts, transparent information about what you can expect on the trail. You're not saying that it is a capital A ADA compliant trail.
Right.
Want to be real kind of clear on that. You're just sharing information about what's on the trail so somebody can make a decision on
Hmm.
their own. There is a place for capital A, ADA compliant trails. And then there is a place for lowercase. This trail is, like kind of, here's the accessibility information about this trail or what to expect. And then that's just trip planning.
Well, what about concerns about liability, folks that might be concerned about opening themselves up to risk and communicating some of these things?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it was the thing that jumped out at us with Outdoor NC right at the beginning because we were thinking, oh, well, you could just go and talk about, we had hopes that we would be able to go and actually capture trail condition information, slope, surface, cross slope, like all of these things. That was going to be too challenging. And a lot of our partners felt like that would be opening them up to liability issues. So that's where it became really important to work with the land managers. And if what they wanted to communicate on their site as a very, like low barrier to entry, where to start, what are the, things that your parks department, your state parks, national parks are already talking about as ADA compliant, and just talk about that, but promote it, really bring it to the forefront, because that's something that wasn't happening either. And then as they got more comfortable with it or started creating new partnerships with organizations that were doing trail assessment type work, then they could find ways where maybe the tourism department could fund going and having 5 or 6 miles of trail assessed to like kind of a national standard for trail assessment, and then they could promote it. So there's a lot of ways that that partnership can work. It certainly wouldn't be a DMO necessarily going out and doing trail assessments and things like that, but they could help fund another organization to do it, and then they could promote that as a tourism product.
I see. Okay, so there's actually like a DMO that wants to get into this, might be able to contract to someone and do it that, thorough trail assessment, provide the DMO back the information that then they can promote more effectively and confidently that that's what the users are expecting.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a good way for like a DMO to continue to be involved and participate, but without kind of taking on what might feel like the liability of it, right? They have somebody with a real track record doing assessments to an accepted standard, and then they can share information they feel confident about.
So these standards and resources and toolkits that you're talking about, is there anywhere that we can go right away to see some of these?
Yeah, there is an adaptive mountain bike trail standard, and then there is a kind of there's a universal trail assessment protocol. It's called UTAP, and that is all of the essential elements that you look at for trail conditions, surface, slope, cross slope, distance, a few other things fall into those categories. And then the adaptive mountain biking trails, there's a lot more considerations in that, just because it's big equipment. So there are more considerations there. I also like the Forest Service has like a 600-page document on everything that they do, from campgrounds to trails and visitor centers, and just for looking at the breadth of information that's out there. They've got their guidelines are really good too.
That's fantastic. Thanks. I'm wondering, in Boog, you were on that call yesterday with Active Southern West Virginia, if they utilized this UTEP trail assessment standards in their long point assessment, but I can't recall.
Yeah, I can't remember either. I think they had standards they were using, but I can't remember what. The thing I thought of as well is, Trail Forks. I was just actually hopping over on a Trail Forks to see if they have, for the lowercase a accessibility information, if they had a way to, since we're already looking at creating that unified trail information accessibility for the gorge. I was wondering if Trail Forks may have a way to do that. I know they have a way to do that, but I don't know if they have a category just for adaptive biking or for adaptive hiking and everything.
So for that, I would recommend take a look at the Maine Trail Association, MTA, and they have recently added, basically just added an icon to include trails that have been professionally assessed. And this has been done by a gentleman, Enan Gidden. He's in Maine. He is like a kind of an international adventurer. Like I think he's climbed, like El Capitan. He's got spinal bifida. He's been in a wheelchair since he was a child, but he is hardcore. And he goes and does all of these trail assessments for them, goes and does X number of miles, comes back, logs it into their state database of trail mapping that they have. There are other states that are starting to do that. It's usually those state trail organizations that have, that kind of catalog inventory of trails. And then I know they're starting to create those APIs between them, Trail Forks, All Trails, and ways to then get it out to that larger audience too.
That's really helpful. There's a group in West Virginia that I keep coming back to that I'm wondering if they do these trail assessments. I know they do them for businesses, but it's called Access
Mm,
on the Go.
mm,
Um,
mhm,
and I know that they do them for businesses, and there's like a grant program that they help businesses tap into to make, entry into the businesses more ADA compliant or accessible. And,
mhm.
and I'm curious about if they've tapped into that or if that's something that if they haven't, that might be because, if West Virginia is moving in this direction, I just keep coming back to a lot of the data that you shared, how, a lot of us have like in our lifetime, we're going to end up in this group, right? And I'm just thinking West Virginia with an older population, um, we're probably have higher numbers of average, or percentage of folks that are in um, this minority like that we're speaking about. And I see it as a lot of opportunity in West Virginia. So I know we're past the hour. I appreciate everyone's time. I just want to pause one more time if there's any other last questions to ask Bobby while we have him. Thanks so much, Bobby. Really appreciate
Yep.
you.
I'll be at the summit too. So happy to connect with anybody during that week as well. So, yeah, appreciate everybody joining.
Fantastic. Yeah, and hope to see everyone at the summit. And the links to all of the resources we were speaking about at the beginning are in the chat. And follow us on our newsletter to find out more. Thanks so much, everyone.
Everyone.